Engle here for Hirsh and Keith Weekend Playbook. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Who knows where else we'll be live later. I apologize for no intro, the wrong intro music. My lead-in videos are gone. Not Facebook. I can't blame Facebook this time. It's a StreamYard issue, but we'll get it straightened out for Friday. And in any event, we welcome all of you. I can't thank my groups. They're not scrolling across the screen either because that seems to be gone. Let me just check that real quick while we're talking. Jack, how are you this morning, Jack, while I'm doing this? Are you having a good week?
Yeah, I'm good, Keith. I mean, I'm looking forward to when we have a show when we hit the ground running, talking about sports. You're always complaining, but then again, Keith, you'd be complaining about the Yankees if you started out. It's the first thing. The better you complain about something else and leave the Yankees on the back burner until late on in the show. We got to give the Mets some equal time. I mean, I don't think we talk about the Mets, Keith, because they're good.
Maybe.
If the Mets weren't good, I think, you'd mention them a bit more.
The problem with this type of doing these types of shows, these podcasts is, it's more fun to talk about the negative stuff than the positive stuff sometimes. That's the problem. I fall into that trap. And we're going to get into the Mets a little bit today, but we'll talk about the Hall of Fame and Judge's injury and the Mets, maybe a little bit the NL West and the trade deadline. We got some boxing news, and not to touch on it too much, but the passing of Dwight Muhammad Kawhi, if I said his name correctly.
Yeah.
For Dwight Braxton, right? Was that his name originally?
Yeah, that was his name. Former world light heavyweight champion Dwight Muhammad Kawhi passed away. Also, I want to mention another great character in the sport of boxing. Don Elbaum passed away. I'm going to want to talk about him as well. I mean, two giants in the boxing industry passed away this weekend, and we'll talk about him later in the show or whenever you think's appropriate.
We'll get into him. That's fine. We're going to start with the Hall of Fame. It's always big news when the Hall of Fame inductions come. Interesting weather probably here in Cooperstown yesterday. If it was anything like it was here, poured all morning and got very humid in the afternoon and rained again. Hopefully they missed it. I didn't see a lot of it. I watched some clips this morning. CC Sabathia, Ichiro, Billy Wagner, who I forever was kind of on the fence about and had some arguments with people on some of my shows, but I came around to Billy Wagner, I think, after a while. And on the veterans side, or whatever we're calling the committee that elects these guys these days, because we change the name every few years, Dick Allen and Dave Parker get in as well. I think there was a Ford Frick Award winner, and I could not find it this morning. Do you know if a writer got in?
Well, I just want to go over the names that you mentioned, Keith. There's Slam Dunk Hall of Famers, and then there's the Hall of the Very Good. And the way things are now, the criteria has changed. We're no longer looking at just immortals getting in. And when I talk about immortals, I'm talking about the Willie Mazes, the Hank Aaron's, the Joe DiMaggios, guys like that are absolute slam dunk choices where it's insanity to think they wouldn't be a Hall of Famer. They're obviously it without even a thought. And then they're the very good players. So let me say the great players, but they're not really immortal. And some of them got in this year, and criteria has changed. So perhaps I'm coming around, and I guess I can be okay with it. Ichiro, I think, comes closer to being an immortal, an all-time great player, than being in the Hall of the Very Good. But then you take the Dave Parkers, the Richie Allens. I'm not saying they don't deserve to get in per se, but they come under the Hall of the Very Good. They're not all-time great players. In other words, if you make up a team, Keith, of the greatest players to ever live, and you'd have a right field, probably someone like a Henry Aaron, okay? Someone like him, he would be on your short list if he wouldn't be your guy.
Right.
But if I told you, no, you can't have Hank Aaron, I'm giving you Ichiro, you'd say, okay, I'm hardly missing a beat. But if you're giving a Dave Parker, all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, oh, I got a great player there. But, it's a little bit of a downgrade. That's what I mean about the Hall of the Very Good. That's what Billy Wagner, his case. Billy Wagner, great reliever, but not an all-time great in the sense that he's an immortal. It's questionable whether he, should be in the Hall of Fame or not. But I've come around. I'm okay with it, and I'm happy for Billy Wagner, the individual. He gets to experience it, and he gets in. And I'm not saying he's not deserving, but it comes under the call of the very good, like the Billy Wagners, the Scott Rowlands, the Harold Baineses.
I think it's unfair to compare Dave Parker and Harold Baines. Dave Parker was much better player for a longer period of time than Harold Baines.
At his peak. At his peak.
Yeah. And I think to me, that's what I have to look at. There are accumulators. I mean, if you took any, like a 5-year stretch, and I don't mean to demean Carl Yastrzemski. I love Carl Yastrzemski, great player. But if I take any 5-year stretch of his, I can say, wow, I don't know. He compiled some great numbers. But even as a compiler, he didn't get to 500 home runs, which is one of the big milestones for years. But guys, if you take 5-year stretch to say a Don Mattingly, I say, well, he belongs in there. You could say he was the dominant player in baseball over a 5-year period or close to it. And I can say the same thing about Parker. I can't say that about Harold Baines ever was one of the dominant players in the game.
No, I agree. But Carl Yastrzemski was a Triple Crown winner. And one of the great defensive left fielders in baseball history, arguably. He was a great fielder. So don't just look at his offensive stats.
I was only picking a guy that accumulated a lot over, say, 20, because he played 24 seasons or something, right? He belongs in the Hall of Fame. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, because there's other reasons than just your numbers. I get it. But people will point at Dick Allen, they'll point at Dave Parker, and all they look at are the career numbers compared to some other guys in there. You can't do it that way.
But Keith, you're missing the point. I'm not saying Dave Parker doesn't belong. He's a great player. Good for him. He recently passed away.
Sad.
I'm glad, but he heard the announcement that he got in. So he had that thrill, knowing that he was going to be voted in.
Yeah.
But when you talk about a Dave Parker, you can't put him quite on the level of a Roberto Clemente or Hank Aaron. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Great.
There's the immortal players, and then there's the Hall of the Very Good.
Yeah.
Okay. We have certain players say, listen, a guy like Aaron Judge, I could make an argument he's better than any right fielder ever. If I told you Aaron Judge was the greatest right fielder in the history of baseball outside of, let's say, Babe Ruth, who accumulated incredible numbers, you can actually make the argument, not career-wise, certainly, but at peak value.
Hold on. So that's a great point. Actually, it's a great comparison for what I was trying to talk about with some like Mattingly and some other guys who didn't have long careers, didn't get the big career numbers, but dominated over a period of time. If Judge, God forbid, could never play again after today or the last time he played, would he be a Hall of Famer? He wouldn't be, in my mind.
I would vote him in perhaps because of peak value. Couple MVPs, maybe not. I'd have to sit down and I'd have to look at. I'd have to study him out. Nothing's certain when it comes to Judge. Look, on the dais yesterday, who they had first and foremost, Major League Baseball set it up with their alumni. Sitting in front was Derek Jeter with Sandy Koufax. Sandy Koufax, he didn't have that long career. He didn't accumulate the lengthy numbers, but at peak value, he's regarded as perhaps the consensus greatest pitcher of all time. Now, Roger Clemens had a greater career than Sandy Koufax. It's not even close when you think of it, but at peak value during his era, there was, Sandy Koufax was the man. And to just give you an idea, Bob Gibson, who was an incredibly phenomenal pitcher, who had a 1.12 ERA 1 year. You ask people, they came up at the same era, who was a greater pitcher? Koufax or Bob Gibson. Even Bob Gibson was willing to take a back seat to Sandy Koufax to give you an idea how great Koufax was.
You should, but my argument is the same, that you should, if you're dominant like Koufax over a short period of time, 5, 6, 7 years, I guess maybe in his case. I'm reading a book right now about that, and the Dodgers compared to what they do with pitchers today, they mismanaged him badly, and that's what hurt his arm. But he compared. That's still my argument about Mattingly. Do you think Don Mattingly belongs in the Hall of Fame?
At peak value, I do. That's why I've come around. But Don Mattingly wouldn't quite hit a guy who's an immortal. I'm talking about like a Hank Greenberg, someone like that. I'm talking about legendary names. Okay, it's the hall of the immortals and the hall of just the very good to great players. A pitcher like Don Sutton, he wasn't a great pitcher, like an all-time great pitcher, but he accumulated 324 wins. Gaylord Perry,
great,
Phil Negro. They accumulated things. It was a body of work. Look, I've come around on Keith Hernandez, 11 Golden Gloves. If you're going to tell me that Keith Hernandez was arguably the greatest defensive first baseman in baseball history, if a guy is the greatest defender of all time in his position, he certainly deserves some very serious consideration to get in the Hall of Fame.
Bill Mazeroski is a great point of that. I mean, Mazeroski's in there for his glove, not his bat, and Hernandez certainly hit.
I don't think of Mazeroski as a Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
that's the thing. But it's moments as well, Keith. And Mazeroski has one of the most famous moments in baseball history, the walk-off home in the 1960 World Series for the Pirates against the Yankees. But certain other players, I think Kirk Gibson's a Hall of Famer, right? And I don't feel he's not genuine Hall of Famer per se.
He's not in.
Excuse me?
He's not in the Hall of Fame, Kirk Gibson.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. Now, a pitcher like Jack Morris, I think I would have gotten my vote. He pitched maybe the greatest game in baseball history, Game 7 of the 91 World Series, with the 10-inning shutout, 1-0 over the Braves for the Twins. But if you look at his whole career, his whole body of work, there could be a little apprehension. Look, CC Sabathia yesterday. Does he belong in? I have no complaint with him getting in. CC is a Hall of Famer, but he's not a slam dunk Hall of Famer like a Roger Clemens would be. A Roger Clemens is an absolute slam dunk Hall of Famer, 100%. But he had his issue. But the point is, for what Clemens did on the field, the Hall of Fame was made for guys like that, the super great players, but it's not like that anymore. It's for guys who've had excellent careers, can get in the Hall of Fame. And I've kind of come around. That's how it is with all Hall of Fames.
Pitchers are different. Pitchers are a lot different now because they're not going to win 300 games. Nobody's ever winning 300 games.
Yeah.
Nobody's winning 250 games again, most likely. I think CC had 250, if I'm not mistaken.
251, I think. Yeah, I'm okay with CC getting in. CC would have gotten my vote. I would have voted for CC if I had a vote, but he's not immortal.
5 straight years in the top 5 in the Cy Young Award. I don't think anybody's ever done that. Koufax, no.
But my point is this. If we sit down and I show you names compared to CC like a Bob Gibson, it's not that close. Gibson obviously is more Hall of Fame worthy than CC, who's Hall of Fame worthy. Again, CC would have gotten my vote. I would have voted for CC if I had a vote. So I'm not diminishing him in any way, shape, or form. But they're the great pitchers, the super great players. And then they're the players who are really, really good. They had a number of peak value years where they stood out. You mentioned Carlos Fremsky, a guy like Frank Robinson, Sure, Hall of Famer. Guys like that. But there's certain other guys who've gotten in who aren't obvious Hall of Famers beyond a shadow of a doubt. I just want to say one thing, Keith. I think it's got to be made public, the people who voted. I don't think someone should be able to hide behind being anonymous. Like the one voter who didn't vote for Ichiro and one voter didn't vote for Jeter.
Yeah.
They've got to be called out on something like that. I mean, they're entitled not to vote for them, first of all, because there's a ballot. You're entitled to vote for whoever you want to on the ballot. Maybe we should change the ballots, because if it's so obvious, we had Steve Swisher get on the ballot one year, and he was celebrating. Now, if you have Steve Swisher and Derek Jeter on the ballot, for example, hypothetically, you're entitled to vote for Swisher, not Jeter. It's your right. It really is.
Right.
But why have them both on the ballot if it's so ridiculously obvious? One guy isn't nearly on the same level as another. It's a little different. If you have Alan Trammell and Derek Jeter both on the ballot, now it's arguable who you could vote for. I suspect most people would vote for Jeter. But if you voted for Trammell, no one could really call you out, as being, how can you do that? Blah, blah, blah. It would be at least a logical vote.
Since we're on this topic, I'm going to move this one because this is controversial with Yankee fans. I'm going to be, and among Yankee fans, I've always been on the wrong side of this argument. I love Thurman Munson as much as anybody. He was a great leader. He doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry. He died tragically, and that's why this argument comes up. But if he played his whole career, I don't know that Thurman Munson would have been Hall of Fame worthy myself. And Billy Martin's another weird case. Part of me wants to say yes to Billy because all the turnaround jobs that he did, but he only won one World Series at the end of the day. And all his other problems, which really shouldn't come into play with.
Wait. It's called Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Being a famous character of the game,
so you say,
how you contributed means something. That's got to factor into the equation. Billy Martin won several. You talk about winning, Keith. Okay, think of all the championships as a player, the team he was on. And he had one great catch that may have saved the Yankees in the World Series.
Probably did.
And think of what Billy Martin has done with other teams that were bad teams, and he elevated them into playoff teams. They didn't win a World Series, but he elevated teams like the Twins, the Tigers, the Rangers, the Athletics.
I could argue at the end of his era there, though, he was as detrimental as those teams as he was a positive influence when he got there. So there's an argument for and against Billy. In fact, on your debate show, I think one week you weren't there. I had to make the argument he gets in. I could make an argument Billy Martin gets in.
Well, I used to have fun with Dr. Paul Semendinger talking of, the Yankee historian. He couldn't stand Billy Martin. Yeah. Absolutely couldn't stand him, the way he acted and everything. He didn't say it outright, but you could tell. And he was a school principal, Dr. Semendinger. And I said, if Billy Martin took over a school that had the lowest reading grades in the city, he would elevate them the first year into one of the top schools. The hallways would be empty, and he would be called Billy Books. But by the third year he was there, there'd be graffiti on the walls. Yeah. He would be coming in. He would be reporting to the principal's office 11 in the morning, and the secretary would say earlier, Mr. Martin's in a meeting. He'd come in hungover, But that's Billy. He had a problem. I mean, his drinking problem got the best of him.
A lot of personality defects for sure.
But I think he belongs, and I think Billy Martin is a Hall of Famer based on body of work. That's another issue too, Keith.
Compare him though.
Body of work should be an issue. It's not. They don't judge body work. Joe Torre. Does Joe Torre belong in as a player alone, or as a manager alone? I don't think he belonged. I'm not sure, but he was really good at both. And his body of work makes him a slam dunk choice to me. His body of work.
Yeah, but they don't look at it that way, unfortunately. If you combine the two, you're right. He's a slam dunk. I do think he's a Hall of Famer as a manager, and I think he's borderline as a player. But
it's hard to win championships. Jim Leland, great manager. Okay, does Jim Leland belong in?
Well, here's my argument. Billy does belong in. If Jim Leland belongs in, then so does Billy Martin. If Earl Weaver. Billy Martin's got a higher winning percentage than Earl Weaver and just as many World Series championships. So Billy belongs in on those bases, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it's hard to win World Series. It's really hard. It's really difficult. You have a lot of great managers. You take a guy like Bruce Bochy. I'm pronouncing his name wrong. He has 3 World Series wins with the Giants. I mean, you win 3 World Series, and unless you have a totally stacked team, you kind of belong in. That's Dave Roberts. They've won a couple of World Series with the Dodgers. They've had stacked teams they've given them, but he's done a good job.
Danny Fuller might
done a good job. If they win a 3rd World Series, the Dodgers, I mean, how do you not consider them? Dick Williams, he's in the Hall of Fame. They won a couple of World Series with the A's, but they had great teams. In the year he left, they won the World Series without him. Okay, when now Alvin Dark took over, 1974 for him. But Dick Williams managed the San Diego Padres in 1984, and he took them to a World Series in the first one in many a year they were in for a lot of years.
Yeah, Danny. So Danny agrees with
the public. Yeah, I don't want these guys hiding.
No.
I'm going to tell you why, Keith. Take baseball. We know who the umpires are. Football, we know who the officials are. We know who they are in basketball. They're out there in the open making their calls. I mean, a voter should be able to make his call. Boxing judges. Are we going to make them anonymous, that they can give in their votes quietly? No one's going to know who they are?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Give your darn vote. If you don't think Ichiro belongs in, what's it based on? Myself. This is just the way I think, Keith. You can always make an argument for anything. In the case of Ichiro, though, what possible argument can you make?
None.
That he's not in the Hall of Fame?
None. Not a one. No World Series. That's it. Big deal. You can't take that. But
no World Series. Okay, there you go.
Ernie Banks.
There's your argument that, well, they never went to the World Series, so he wasn't a winner. Like I said, you could argue about anything, but now I'm going to start pointing out all the guys in the Hall of Fame. So Bonds, if he didn't have his issue, you're telling me wouldn't be a Hall of Famer. Hank Aaron won 1 World Series in his long career. Willie Mays 1 World Series in his whole career. So you're going to tell me Ken Griffey Jr. shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame? You're going to tell me Mike Trout shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame when his time comes?
Mike Trout's going to be an interesting case, by the way, if his career continues on a down.
Oh, Mike Trout?
He's going to be an interesting case.
Mike Trout's in already. Mike Trout's solidly in, Keith. He's solidly in already. I don't even need to look at the guy's numbers. Solidly in.
The way these guys vote, I'm not positive he'll get in. That's what I'm saying. He should be.
Well, I'll give you an interesting case, and I think he's got his work cut out from a little bit still. Giancarlo Stanton. Interesting case.
Yeah,
he's got a couple,
but
I mean, 2 more seasons. 30 home run seasons. I mean, if Giancarlo gets to 500 homers, are you really going to leave him out?
No, it's 500. No, I can't. As much as I don't like his game, he was at one time one of the top players in the game, top 5 for a number of years, but not in his Yankee incarnation in Miami. But he was a great player at one time. I haven't been a fan of his here because of his play. I don't have anything against him. And Danny agrees that Trout's in, but not solid. I kind of agree because we have recency bias. Don Mattingly's biggest problem was he had his peak and then he got his injury problems, his back problems, and his numbers suffered for the last half of his career. And that's what people remember. And it's not fair. It's not fair, but it does happen, unfortunately. So
it all depends on your criteria. Baseball is about numbers, but the most unfortunate thing is it's about only offensive numbers. People don't judge the amount of times as a defender that you've robbed someone of a hit. We look at the box, Keith, we look at the box scores and we see a player went 0 for 4, but we don't see where an outfielder could have made a great play robbing someone of a double. That's just as good as him hitting the double. But we never look at that. And Don Mattingly, 9-time Golden Glove winner, all the defensive gems he, had in the field that robbed guys, you put it on top of that. Even after his offensive output went down, he was still superb defensively. We just don't look at that, and we underrate what a first baseman can do defensively. That was the place where they tried to hide a guy at first base. But now we're seeing in modern baseball, it's such an important position offensively. Look, the Yankees gave some thought with Aaron Judge on the injured reserve list when he comes off because he has a hard time throwing. Maybe they'll put him at first base because he played first base in high school. So which counts for something. It does. It really does.
Yes.
Because there's some familiarity with it that the guy's been there before. It's not completely new to him. Okay? But if a guy is a great defensively, I mean, we got to take into consideration we do for third baseman like Brooks Robinson, great glove. So he was a Hall of Fame. Not so much what he did offensively.
He had some decent offensive years. He wasn't dominant a year.
He wasn't George Brett or Wade Boggs, but his glove was unearthly.
Turned around, and that's my argument for Greg Nettles, by the way, as we're going to continue, guys who save games, and we do have metrics that account for it now, whether they're accurate or not, I don't know. But when you're saving runs and winning and stopping losing streaks with your glove like Brooks Robinson, you have to be in the Hall of Fame. Same thing, and I agree. It took me a while to come around with Hernandez. I'm okay with Hernandez being in, but I think Greg Nettles, I look at some of the guys at third base, and guys go, well, you say he was a great defensive player, but he didn't win a lot of Gold Gloves. Well, we had Robinson winning them, and he played with Buddy Bell and a bunch of guys who were winning Gold Gloves, and he won 3. It wasn't like he won none.
Well,
go watch my favorite World Series of all time with the Yankees is Game 3 in 1978. Yankees go down. They're going to lose that game, then be down 3-0. Nettles saves like 5 runs in that game.
Yeah, but since we're talking defense, okay, Keith Hernandez, and it's taken me a while to come around. In the past, I didn't think he was a Hall of Famer, but he's more worthy position by position of getting in the Hall of Fame than Brooks Robinson. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to say this. Hernandez was as good at his position of first base as Robinson was at his position at third base. Call it a wash. Call it a wash. Now, I know third base, it's a little bit harder because you got to make the throw to first base, okay? I get all that. But that's the only thing. And Hernandez was a better hitter than Brooks Robinson. To call it a wash. In other words, I'm saying if Brooks Robinson is in, Hernandez should be in.
Yeah, I don't even know because I get into that. I fall into that line of thinking a lot too. If this guy's in, then this guy belongs in. But I don't even know the way we get in now. I can't compare. I could compare anybody to Harold Baines and say he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Well, Harold Baines got in with the veteran committee, got him in. And the reason he got in, he left the White Sox. Jerry Reisendorf, strikes me as a good guy and a good person, a caring owner. And it kind of bothered him, Baines leaving the White Sox. He liked Baines. So he wanted to make it up to Baines, as did Tony La Russa, who was White Sox manager for a lot of years. So La Russa was like a head of the Veterans Committee, and he rallied the troops to vote for Baines. And Joe Torre made an argument on Baines's behalf. And like I said, you can make an argument on anything. If they didn't have one of the strike-shortened seasons, Torrey said Baines would have gotten up to 3,000 hits, and then no one would be arguing. So he said, "What?" So he says there's no argument there. But we got some guys who are a little short of the Hall of Fame, like Johnny Damon. He got what, like 2,700 hits, a little more than that. If Damon could have gotten up to 3,000 hits, he'd be in the Hall. He's probably never getting in.
He's never a guy that I thought of said, man, how come he's not in the Hall of Fame? Never.
Exactly. Same with Bernie Williams. But if they did, but the baseball is numbers oriented. Yes. If both guys would have had a couple of more great seasons and they could have reached a certain milestone, and that milestone was 3,000 hits, now it becomes very hard to keep them out. But you know, Keith, we got the Veterans Committee now. The guys who we thought wouldn't have a chance of getting in are probably going to get in at some point. My guess is Donnie Mattingly gets in at some point.
I'm going to argue against Joe Torre's argument because Harold Baines was 134 hits short of 3,000. He wasn't getting 134 hits if they played another 60 games in 1981.
But Keith, he would have hung around for part of an extra season. Riffs and the White Sox would have put him on the roster, gotten him to 3,000 hits, and then retired him.
Good morning, Michael.
Hey, how you doing?
And Paul says, we can't make an argument for Ellis Burks. Paul, come on.
No. I mean,
maybe
I'm not sure of his numbers, but it doesn't.
I would say
you want to name guys.
I got to think of how many guys
you want a name to jump out at you, Paul. Yeah, that's what you want. That's what comes to me first and foremost. But there were intangibles involved. The case of Dick Allen. Dick Allen was a problem when he played. He was a problem. I'm going to get to that comment in a second, Danny. Yes. Dick Allen was accused of not hustling. And he was very controversial because they kept saying he didn't put out 100%. And I don't mean he was lackadaisical in his style like a Robinson Cano. Some guys by nature just look lackadaisical. You know, that's just the way they are. But Dick Allen was kind of like a problem in that sense. To me, Steve Garvey belongs in the Hall of Fame.
I agree.
I think with Steve Harvey, Steve Harvey, great player during his time. The only thing Steve Garvey maybe didn't do well, he didn't throw that well. And as a first baseman, throwing counts for something. You got to make the throw to second for double play, throw it home. But he had a good glove, and Garvey was a great player.
The problem with Garvey is everybody hated him, and because he was a bit of a phony, unfortunately. But that shouldn't matter. His numbers should matter. Here's a guy who dominated the game over quite a stretch. And played, and by the way, set a record for consecutive games played in the National League. That stuff all should count for something. I agree.
Yeah, that's a great comparison, Garvey, Keith Hernandez. But I'm going to tell you this, Danny. Keith Hernandez defensively was flat out better than Steve Garvey. Steve Garvey was good defensively. If you had to give Garvey a grade defensively, you'd give him a B. A, B, C, D, and F. I give him a B. Keith Hernandez, I'd give an A+. That's the difference involved. And Keith Hernandez's bat wasn't so far behind Garvey's that you can't say he wouldn't have passed them. It's a kind of weird comparison. If I ask you, Keith, who you'd rather have, Keith Hernandez or Steve Garvey, to me, give me either one of them, of course. But you have to consider Hernandez's glove in all of this.
I'm gonna do Paul just because you're one of my favorite guys, Paul. I'm gonna do you some justice. I'll give you the numbers. They aren't good. 2,100 hits, 350 home runs, 1,200 RBIs, did have a good OPS of 874. But here's a guy who finished one time in the top 10 in the MVP. One time. Not a guy that sticks in your mind. As Jack said, I've never once thought, just like Johnny Damon said, why isn't Ellis Burks in the Hall of Fame? Neither one of them are going to ever be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, we're talking. Whose stats did you just give?
Ellis Burks. Not even close.
Okay. No. The stats itself, maybe you could make a case if there were other intangibles involved.
One goal.
And it could get Ellis Burks. Oh, exactly. That you could get him over the top. You know, some guys are just consistently good over a period of time. They're not great. Well, I'm going to give you an example. I don't know what his numbers are. I don't have a clue off the top of my head, his career numbers. But if you can look up Charlie Morton right now, I'm just curious what his numbers are. In no way on earth is he a Hall of Famer. Don't even go there. But the guy's what, 40 years old? So he's had to have been around a while.
Been around since 2008. He's won 144 games, lost 100.
No. I thought he had more wins than that. Okay, so forget about him.
Even close to 150.
I thought he probably was at 185, 190, and then I thought, okay, he could still get over 200. Forget that.
His career ERA is
No, forget it. No, forget him. No, forget it. I thought it was a little better, but because of his age and everything. And I'm going to give you an idea, guy who doesn't have a tremendous amount of wins, but he's a first ballot Hall of Famer without question, Clayton Kershaw. But he doesn't have as many wins as a lot of other Hall of Fame hitters.
Now where we are, right, with guys finishing their careers like Kershaw, and they played pretty much their entire career under different parameters. Guys weren't winning 20 games year after year like Ferguson Jenkins and Koufax in his prime, and they weren't doing that. I mean, 15 wins is a lot of wins today. And Kershaw, I think Kershaw is a slam dunk Hall of Famer. I really do, unless his postseason struggles.
He is slam dunk. But what I meant by intangibles, Keith, would be in the case potentially of Andy Pettitte. Andy Pettitte, to me, is not a Hall of Famer. I repeat, not. I'm a big Andy Pettitte fan, being a Yankee fan. I love Andy Pettitte. But if Andy Pettitte didn't leave as a free agent to go to Houston for 3 years, and the games he won at Houston, prorate him and say he would have won them as a Yankee, he would be the winningest pitcher in New York Yankee history. And if that were the case,
he'd be a Hall of Famer.
Certainly he would deserve a lot more consideration. I think, wow, the winningest pitcher in Yankee history, that might do it for me to give him the vote into the Hall of Fame. Now, people point out, oh, look what Andy did in the postseason. Well, the Yankees are getting into the darn postseason every year. Players are going to accumulate numbers because they have all these postseason games. And Andy Pettitte's postseason numbers, unbalanced, were good, not great. They mirrored what he did during the regular season. Now, if it far exceeded it, that would have been an absolute consideration.
Yeah, 100%. And the extra games in the postseason kind of skew all that. Mantl's still the best postseason player of all time in my mind. Reggie, everybody talks about Reggie, but Reggie got to play a lot more postseason games because of the added playoffs, even though it was only one more layer at that point. Anyway, this went pretty well, I think. A lot of chatter here. And listen, this is a debate we'll continue to have as long as we have a Hall of Fame.
And listen, but congratulations to all the guys. And as a Yankee fan, you give me Billy Wagner there. I'll grab Billy Wagner anytime for my bullpen. And CC was a great Yankee. And Ichiro, 2.5 years with the Yankees. You know, later on in his career, we don't think of him as being a Yankee, but he mentioned it yesterday. And
he was a shell.
It was an honor for the Yankee organization to be able to put the pinstripes on Ichiro. He says it was an honor to be with the Yankees a couple of years, but it was, as a Yankee fan, it was, honor, a privilege.
What about the Aussie or what? What about the Aussie? I don't know who we're talking about.
So why is this put up there?
I'm
I
not
don't know what it's talking about. Don't put it up. Don't waste our time.
to give guys to explain themselves. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll move on from the Hall of Fame. We'll move quickly because I do want to get this while we're on baseball real quick. Judge injury. We'll touch on it quickly. We talked about it yesterday on the Sunday morning show, and we'll probably get a chance to talk more about it Friday. Maybe more news comes out. They've avoided, at least it appears, the worst and no tear in his elbow. If Judge has to hit and only hit the rest of the season, this doesn't hurt the Yankees just marginally. It hurts them a lot because outfield defense will go down a lot.
Yeah, because Judge is an elite defender. If Stanton is playing the outfield,
hurts a lot.
Wait. If there's a guarantee, there's no guarantee, of course, that Stanton is not going to get injured.
Forget about the injury.
Stanton is not a bad outfielder. He's not an asset out there. Don't get me wrong. But Stanton can hold his own. Stanton can be on the level of a Juan Dominguez in the outfield for the rest of the year. I mean, Stanton at one point was maybe a marginal Golden Glove defender when he was young. Obviously, he's not going to be the same. Let's hold off, Keith. It might not be as bad as you think him being out there, but the risk of Stanton getting injured increases substantially if he has to play the outfield. That's a problem.
Lousy your Vizquel Hall of Fame for defense. Well, we're off the Hall of Fame, but that's
all. We're done with the Hall of Fame talk. Get off this. We moved on. Why is this being put up there?
You remember that they're behind and that there's like a 15-second delay.
Yeah, but we've been talking a minute and a half or so on this. I'll go back to the Hall of Fame. I've been known to flip-flop back and forth.
You're good. I think this will impact what the Yankees try to do between now and Thursday at 6:00. I think as well, though. Well,
no. My apologies, Michael. This wasn't about you. Bonds and Clemens do belong in the Hall of Fame, in my view. Both of them. I would agree with that.
Anyway, this will impact what I think the Yankees do. That might even give you a clue of what they think this injury extent is, the type of outfielder they go after here before Thursday. Because they need a pitcher. Seth Lugo's off the.
But Keith, what choice do you have? Keith, you need Stanton's bat in the lineup. You need his bat in the lineup. Stanton.
What was the Yankees' record before Stanton came back?
Stanton's played well for the Yankees. Stanton's played well since coming back. He's hit well, I should say.
The Yankees are a better team without Stanton in the lineup, as a rule. Now, he played well in playoffs last year. I will give you that. But the Yankees had the best record in baseball this year while Stanton was out. When Stanton came back, he's a big part of that 21 and 24 record since June 1st. That's when he came back.
Is that him? It's because the Yankee bullpen has been terrible.
I get it.
It has nothing to do with Stanton. Stanton's done his job.
Actually, no. Stanton has done the same thing he always does, which is leave runners stranded right and left. He comes up with big hits for 3 days, then he doesn't hit for 6 more. I'm never going to and if he plays in the outfield, watch him run the bases. You think he can play the outfield every day? No way.
I'm going to tell you, it's treacherous. I think you want to know, to answer your question, I think he can play the outfield. My fear is this. They're going to be so concerned with Stanton getting injured. Is he going to go all out for balls that he could normally catch? Because that's my concern. Are the Yankees going to tell him, don't go out all out 100% for ball? We don't need you diving. We don't need you lunging. It's like they're going to try to handle him with such care. And to me, you got to roll the dice. If he gets hurt, he gets hurt.
This defense.
You got to play hard.
Jack, if this defense is Bellinger in center, who's a very capable outfielder, I have no problem with. But Dominguez.
Excellent outfielder.
And Dominguez He better be able to cover a lot of ground out there to Bellinger.
Well, Bellinger's going to know to cover maybe a little more ground.
He'll
If
need.
need be. Later in games, they'll put in a defensive replacement. But keep this in mind, Juan Dominguez is learning out there in left field. He's not exactly the best defensive player himself.
He's
But
terrible.
we're not concerned about Juan Dominguez getting hurt.
No, I'm not. But I'm telling you, his defense is horrendous. And if I got to deal with that on both corner positions in the outfield, we got a serious problem. Serious.
We'd have to navigate it.
Getting an outfielder before the trade deadline, but Ian.
I'm going to see. Wait till Stanton makes the great defensive play. What you're going to have to say, Keith?
Well, you let me know when that happens, and I'll eat my words. I promise you. But he better not make 10 bad ones before he makes that one good one. That's all I'm going to say. Don't make sure. Anyway, there'll be more time to talk about that. The Mets, who we don't give enough airtime to. Jack's right. They won 7 straight now. They've really straightened out their situation. We got the trade deadline up. I still think the Mets will bring in are going to look for a third baseman and maybe a starter, maybe a bullpen guy. What are your thoughts here, Jack? Is this team? Which team is this? Is it the team we saw early in the year and the team we're seeing right now, or some combination of?
I think the Mets are pretty good the way they are now, but I think they are going to get some bullpen help. I was thinking that there was the possibility they might have a reunion with Seth Lugo, but Seth Lugo signed with Kansas City, a 2-year extension. He likes it there. He wants to stay there. But the Mets, they did pick up a piece from the Baltimore Orioles, a reliever there, and they're going to look to, relief pitching is at a premium. It's in demand with all the teams, and that's where I think the Mets' attention is. They're going to, they have Batty, third base, Batty, Vientos, whatever. I think they're going to live with those guys there and hope for the best, basically.
In the long run. That lineup is there's some good players in that lineup, but it's not deep. But
sometimes you stick with the guys in the lineup and hope they play well because they're capable. Like Jeff McNeil, you hope he picks it up a little bit. He hasn't been bad. He's been average. What's he hitting? 252. Nemo out there in the outfield. Brandon Nemo. You hope he just plays really well. That he's certainly capable of it. Marte, Soto. Maybe he's going to start carrying the offense. Soto's been good all in all. People don't quite recognize that. Yeah. He's not having a superstar year, but he's having a pretty good year. And then Pete Alonso is an X factor. Always, he could be sensational down the stretch. He could be awesome. He could start, having some bad offensive games like he's had recently. Alonso made a good defensive play for final out a couple of days ago in the game. And he's been criticized defensively. So kudos to him on that.
And I think pitching will be their focus. And if they don't make a move for a positional player, they better hope Vientos regains last year's form. Alvarez plays much better than he played in the first half. He's back. I don't know how much he's playing. I know he's back in the major leagues. And McNeil and second base. Somehow they can't have 3 positions that are just a hole in the lineup. They've got to have at least one of those guys, if not 2, really rebound. And Batty's not going to do it. Batty's never shown it over any period of time at all. But Vientos had a great year last year, and maybe he'll come back. He had battled some injuries, never really got to get on track. Maybe he will. And we'll talk more about the Mets, and we'll talk more about a lot of these teams Friday once we know how the trade deadline shakes out. That'll probably be our major topic on Friday. Jeff, did you have something else with?
No. I'd like to talk about a couple of giants in the world of boxing that passed away.
Yep.
I actually knew about this 2 days before it became public about Dwight Muhammad Qawi, the former world light heavyweight champion who passed away. I received a phone call about it. And, I didn't know I met Qawi before, but I wouldn't say I knew him. But I was trying to get in touch with Qawi for a number of months, and I was unable to. And the reason I was trying to get in touch with, because my manuscript on Michael Spinks. I'm writing his biography, which I work closely with on Michael Spinks. It's out at the publishers right now. I'll
Yep.
talk more about that in the future show. But his main rival, actually, when he was light heavyweight champion, was Dwight Muhammad Qawi. And they knew one another very well because they had sparred countless rounds together at Joe Frazier's gym in Philadelphia. I wanted to get some quotes from Qawi about Michael Spinks, about their unification fight in 1983, what he thought of Michael. But I kept hitting walls. Wherever I would go, I couldn't get in touch with Qawi. I heard rumors that he'd had dementia, he'd had problems, but everywhere I called, it was like he moved on to somewhere else. Well, he was here before, but not here anymore. And finally, I got in touch somewhere, and I got the feeling I had the right place because they said they couldn't release information. When they say you can't release information, it means you kind of know something, as opposed to I have no idea. So I just wasn't able to, and it got to the point I finally had to finish the manuscript without talking to Qawi. But I understood the situation. I heard the rumors that he had dementia. It wasn't confirmed. And then 2 days after I was told he passed away, it became public. And it came out that he had dementia the last 5 years. So, a sad part about boxing in that sense, Dwight Muhammad Qawi, he made something of himself. He was in prison, Rahway State Prison, took up boxing there, came out, didn't have an amateur career even, no amateur career. So he kind of learned as he went along and turned into a great light heavyweight champion. Won the title, beat Matthew Saad Muhammad, stopped Saad Muhammad for the title, retained against Saad Muhammad, made some defenses. A couple of years after beating Saad Muhammad in 1983, he fought Michael Spinks in a unification fight. People were so excited to see that matchup, Qawi against Spinks. Well, my buddy Frank Laterzo could tell you because he worked out in Joe Frazier's gym. Anyone who was at Joe Frazier's gym working out saw those guys box all the time.
Yeah.
Before they became champions. Even when they were champions, they used to spar a lot. They used to spar, but they did it for real in the ring in 83. Spinks fought a very smart fight. He fought an uncharacteristic fight, very conservatively. He outboxed Qawi. Sports Illustrated had the title with Spinks' left jab. They said his left was all right. It was kind of like a funny, and it was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And then Qawi, he was never quite the same after that. He was supposed to have a rematch with Spinks, but he reportedly was injured and the fight fell through right before it was to take place. There's a storyline behind that too long to get into. He did win a version of the World Cruiserweight title after that, so he became a champion again. And then, like all great fighters, his career kind of wound down. At the end of his career, he fought Big George Foreman when Foreman was on the comeback trail. Qawi was much smaller. Qawi could have actually won that fight had he been in shape because Foreman was a bit past it at the time himself. And it's sad, he passed away, another giant, in the boxing world. Great champion. He's in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, Dwight Muhammad Qawi.
I remember watching him fight a lot. And the story was always great, obviously. And I have this memory, and I feel like it's a false memory. You get these things that are ingrained in your brain. You swear they're true. Did he ever go back and have a fight at Rahway State Prison? Am I missing?
No. That wasn't him. What happened? James Scott, an inmate, was at Rahway, and Dwight Muhammad, he did come back to Rahway to fight James Scott. My apologies on what I just said. He came back, and when he fought Scott, the inmates were rooting for Scott, even though Qawi was one of them at one point. Yeah. But now that Qawi was on the outside, like I write in my book, Scott at Rahway was as if he owned, and Qawi coming back was like a renter. Snowbird. He wasn't like a full-time resident there, so they were cheering for Scott. Yeah, we only have a few minutes. We should have left a little more time for this, but I just want to sum up with Kawi before getting to the next person. Kawi, great champion, not an all-time great champion, but nevertheless a great light heavyweight champion who would have been a handful to any light heavyweight in boxing history. On a given night, Kawi could have beaten any light heavyweight champion in boxing history on a given night. That's how good he was. The other person who passed away, he's reported to be 94. People say it was 97. Was Don Elbaum. Don Elbaum was a character of the game, a promoter, matchmaker, do-it-all guy, a hustler in the nice sense of the word. Now, Don Elbaum was the person who was responsible for getting Don King into boxing. And then Elbaum would say, and I regretted it ever since. He had a falling out with Don King. Now, if you want to know about Don Elbaum, Google his name and my name, because I wrote a story that I'm pretty proud of the story. It's a pretty good story. I wrote a feature story on Don Elbaum about a year and a half ago. Is anyone out there, Google my name with Don Elbaum's name to read that story. But to give you an idea what a hustler Don Elbaum was, I'm going to tell you the story. He promoted Sugar Ray Robinson's last fight. It was in Pittsburgh, November 10th, 1965. They have a press conference before the fight, and Don Elbaum produces two gloves. He says, Ray, these are the gloves from your pro debut 25 years ago. Don't ask me how we got them, but we got them. And Sugar Ray's wife is like crying. Sugar Ray is deeply touched by the gesture. And the gloves in the box, and the promoters are saying, try the gloves on. They want pictures. And Elbaum is frantic. He says, no, Ray, no. And Sugar Ray Robinson's wondering, why would he bypass this great publicity, me putting the gloves on? And then it became apparent to Robinson a moment later. He looks at the box, and both of them are right-handed gloves. That was Don Elbaum, the hustler in that sense. Don Elbaum, one of his friends had a funny line about him. Don Elbaum was like Ralph Cramden. Ralph Cramden and Don Elbaum were kind of similar. And I mean this in an endearing way because we all love Ralph Cramden. One of his friends says, Don's made millionaires out of multimillionaires. That because his promotions just wouldn't quite, be the big success. But Don developed a lot of fighters, and he was a real boxing guy, a true boxing guy, and a true character of the game. I mean, I love Don Elbaum. And that's the best. Don Elbaum would fight on his own shows he was promoting. A fighter would pull out. He once had the fighter get married in the ring. Okay? I think after the fight, it's fighter before, but the fighter wound up with a black eye, But to get married in the ring, he'd always have these great gimmicks and great boxing guy.
Good stuff. Rick Watts, and we've talked about this, you and I. What I thought, Rick, is that Jack was holding out for this huge advance, and that's why the book wasn't.
No. With the publisher, the way it works, Rick, I already got accepted a traditional publisher. I'm looking for the best fit. Right now, it's kind of like being like a free agent for the time being. I'm seeing the different publishers, the different this, the different that.
Well, we're all looking forward to that, Jack. And I think Jack's next book will be his own autobiography, from what I understand. But that wouldn't sell. I wouldn't even be interested in reading that. I want to just real quick before we go, and again, I want to pull Jack. You don't have to comment. I'm going to pull you out of the fire here. So Paul was trying to correct when we were putting up stuff still about the whole thing. He was trying to correct himself, and Danny, just so you guys.
No, what did I say that was wrong?
No, it's all good. No, he did. He's good. We were talking.
Paul, I'm sorry. I never meant anything personal. What did I say?
No, just when we.
Please accept my apology, whatever it is, Paul. No, I mean it. I'm sincerely sorry.
You don't have to apologize, because what I've created part of this problem, because on my shows, when I go 2 hours, especially, and it's me in the audience, we can get to all these comments and I can go back and forth and it's not a big deal. Guys, you got to remember, we're in an hour constraint. There's 2 of us here. And when we move on, we pretty much got to move on. I might put a comment up. We don't have to comment on it. I'll put your comment up and the people can see it and we'll just move on if we're on to another topic. That's all. Nobody take offense to anything. Jack's not trying to rile anybody up. Just me. That's all he's trying to rile up. So it's all good. It's a little different format than you guys are used to when you see me. So it's not a problem. It's all good stuff. So you guys were great as always. Jack, you were great as always. Thank you for
my apologies to Paulie. I didn't realize what I did. It's never personal from my end. So accept my apology, please.
He was listening to us on a car on the way to work, apparently. So anyway, he's probably at work. I'll talk to him later. We'll be good. He does. Again, we got to understand that we can't always get to all the comments. And you guys are great. Keep commenting. We want those comments. So it's all good stuff. Jack, you're wonderful. We'll talk to you on Friday. Friday's next time I'll see you, right? And we'll get things fixed on StreamYard. And we'll see you guys then. And I'll see you sometime during the week. One more week of hiatus to the College Football Huddle. Jack's got the Glovefish show tonight at 7 o'clock, correct, with Frank? I'm sure you'll talk more.
Yeah, 7 o'clock tonight, Glovefish, 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Yep. Make sure you tune in there, guys. I'll try to get on and share it to the TGI Sports Talk page as well. So, guys, have a great Monday. Have a great week. See you later. Bye-bye.